Hello and welcome from my side too. I'm Carina Paju. And welcome to this very early afternoon discussion. It's always risky to start with an assumption, but I will do so. I'm assuming that all of us have some kind of a topic that we avoid talking about. Maybe it's with a certain person. Maybe it's personal healthcare choices when you meet your family at Christmas dinner. Maybe it's current politics with your colleagues. Maybe it's climate change or migration. We all have some of these topics. So that's what I'm basing my assumption on. And very often we avoid those topics not because we don't want to talk about them or we don't care about them, it's because we tend to care more about the peace of mind or the relationship itself, and we don't want to risk it. And the second assumption that I'm going to base this on is that it's a paradox. We live at a time when problems are becoming much more complicated, much more complex, and the paradox is that to solve those, we actually need to talk about those important topics, and we need to have calm dialogue with each other. And we know that not one person, not one organization, not one government has all the answers. We are all here together to find the solutions. Now, in my work, I work at Open Government Partnership. I work with Northern European governments and civil society. We talk a lot about how to make the public life more accountable, more transparent, more participatory. And during that, we talk a lot about frameworks. We talk about public consultations. How do we do surveys and roundtables? The more time goes by, the more I see it really comes down to more, can actually people talk to each other? Can they be in uncomfortable discussions without leaving, whether mentally or physically? We need the skill to actually be there, sit with each other, to find and understand really the problems and how people see those problems. With this introduction, I'm also going to introduce our panel, because this is what we are going to talk about today. So I'm lucky, Maria already introduced herself. Then from the municipality of Jõhvi, we have Küllike Kullerkupp, who works in the communications department. Then we have Lauma Žubule, who works as a dialogues facilitator and trainer at DOTS Foundation in Latvia. And we have Janne Kareinen, who comes to us from the Dialogue Academy in Finland, where this method, when we talk about during this 1 hour, the dialogue circle method comes from. But before we go to our panel, we thought, what about instead of us talking about what the dialogue is, we start with a little exercise or an experience. This is the only time I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and talk for 5 minutes, so no worries. This is not going to be just full 1 hour of being outside of your comfort zone today. And we are going to throw the question at you, actually. For 5 minutes, please find a moment to discuss with your partner. How can you discuss important issues without fighting? I suggest you spend 1 minute each telling each other maybe an example of a recent experience or some of your thoughts and reflections, and then ask each other more questions for these 5 minutes. And then we come back to the large room. 5 minutes start. 1 more minute. If you see me, raise your hand. Oh my goodness, that method works miracles. So, what did you learn? Does anybody want to share something with us? What do you fight about? Our microphone lady is coming.
I think we found that most of the fights or conflicts are a direct result of miscommunication or a mutual misunderstanding of emotions or agendas that haven't been voiced by either parties. So maybe it's a very utopian wish, but in terms of conflicts or discussing difficult topics, I think that empathy and mutual understanding should be the baseline of every discussion, and also the ability to be vulnerable, even in a professional setting when you are speaking about your agendas, because that will hopefully disarm also your partner who you're having the discussion with.
If you're in a fragile position, how do you create vulnerability?
Again, it's a very utopian wish because usually it doesn't work. But I personally do believe that showing more vulnerability and showing that you will be accepting and understanding of the other person's vulnerabilities will be the solution. But oftentimes it doesn't work. It does need to be a mutual wish to do so.
So common understanding of even the beginning of the conversation. There was another hand, I think. Yes.
So we actually began somewhere else, and that was that nowadays it seems like it's getting more and more complicated to even find an issue that isn't sensitive or complex in some way. And so the skills needed to sort of negotiate that are becoming more and more important. And we got on to discussing that whenever there is an issue and two parties discussing it, there is usually some sort of hierarchy at play, whether that's actually, let's say, from a professional context, so like a boss talking to their employee, or you just have someone that's more senior in age or more experienced, whatever that may mean. And so whenever you approach an issue, you have a million things to think about at the back of your head. And it's like, what's the hierarchy? Does it matter? Which party am I? Do I have the higher ground or not? And do I have the authority to say anything? And especially if you somehow need to call the other party out. So let's say it's something that you need to correct. then it becomes especially sensitive, whether it's, I don't know, parenting, whether it's, eating meat or not, whatever it is, with friends, at work, with family, it's always like a massive maze that you have to navigate, and it's like a minefield also in several ways. So basically we said that it's really hard and we hope that you have some good tips for us.
Looking at all of you on the stage here. Any further comments that you would like to share? How about here, where you discussed with each other as well? How is negotiation versus discussion? You need to practice this daily.
Can you hear me? Yes. So it was actually quite interesting question also for us to talk about. For me, one answer was, there were two directions, and one direction was that in order not to fight, it has to first start in the conversation that I have intention to be in the conversation in order to understand the other person, support the other person, or support myself, but I have the intention that I'm not going to fight. So this will be, I think, the first case. The second thing, we were also talking about, is fighting always bad? Because when we say this word, can we be in the conversation without fighting? And when we use the word fighting, the association is the conflict, and first of association to the conflict, it's something bad and harmful and pressure and stress. But if I look from work psychology, it's actually these healthy fights and healthy conflicts, they are very much needed in order for people to collaborate better, to come to better solutions. But these healthy fights and healthy conflicts can only happen if there is a very trustful environment, if there is a respectful environment where I have this easiness to say any opinion and to feel that I will be not judged or criticized. So these would be two answers from my side.
Thank you. Well, this was the beginning to first start thinking about, I guess, why you've even ended up in this tent, and to experience a little bit of dialogue while talking about dialogue. As you listen today and during this 1 hour, I invite you to think about this one question. Where in your own life could dialogue make a difference? And we talk now much more about what this dialogue really means. While we do this, I will check, come back with my eyes every once in a while. If you have a spontaneous question, just raise your hand, and we'll make sure to get your question into the conversation. Now, going to our discussion, one thing common for all the four of you is either you've worked to support, or you've facilitated, or you worked with a method called the dialogue circle, and a wider concept known as national dialogues. Before we define it, just to give you a sheer glimpse of the scope of how far it's already gone. So Maria mentioned that Nordic Council of Ministers really supports this in the Baltic Sea region. So in Finland, between 2020 and 2025, 1,200 discussions took place. They were led by 500 different organizations in 170 locations and in 15 different languages. Now, in the first Estonian national dialogues, there were 72 dialogue circles that took place. The importance perhaps is also underlined by that the president of Estonia recently brought together a group of different civil society people, journalists, librarians, and really to talk about that dialogue culture and the importance of that for our societies. In Latvia, just in the last 2 years, 100 facilitators for these dialogue circles have been trained. 100 different dialogues have been organized. Over 500 participants have taken place. I'm sure the numbers are actually even bigger, but this is just one project that we're talking about here. So this is really to give a sense that this is really a growing movement, and as well in other countries, not in just Estonia, Latvia, and Finland. So Janne, my first question is to you. The Dialogue Academy is the founder of this dialogue circle method. When you now give us the definition of what it is we actually talk about, can you also take us back to the moment when you thought, this needs a different kind of solution, and the dialogue is that solution.
That later one was a really difficult question, but I try. You can mean almost all kind of conversation to say that they are dialogues. That's the reason why we have done theory, which is quite simple, and it is that dialogue is focused on in three things: understanding a topic, yourself, and others. And there might be different kind of theories or understanding about the dialogue, but when we are talking about dialogue, we mean this. Focus on understanding three things. And that later question, first of all, in Finland, and I think that quite many other countries, people don't talk so much that there is different ways to have a conversation. And dialogue is a special way to have a conversation, as special as negotiation or debating. And we have tried to make different kind of concepts around the dialogue, and then also actually with the Latvians we have made this dialogue circle concept or method. We have tried to do them so that people will have more skills and more places to be in this kind of dialogue where you can actually feel or practice in everyday life, practice democracy. In dialogue we try to have as much equality and freeness as it possible, and these are two cornerstones of democracy. And we have thought that if people will have more skills to be in the dialogues and more skills to facilitate also dialogues, then our democracies will be better. And we have thought that if people have these kind of places that they can feel that they are really heard of, and they can listening to each other, so that they can, through those two things, already they can understand more about themselves and others and also society. So it makes whole society better. And this is personal reason for me why I'm so keen to distribute dialogue in the different kind of organizations and topics and all kind of situations. So probably this is enough in the beginning. I can tell you later more.
Absolutely. Do we? Oh, microphone is coming.
Thanks. So one of my points about discussion or dialogues that I think is important is to, when we're thinking about understanding, one of the points that makes an understanding possible is to begin by sharing definitions, principles, and things like that. So I would like to ask you in the beginning, you mentioned that there's dialogue, there's conversation, but you mentioned that dialogue is a special kind of conversation. So could I get some definitions here? What are we talking about here? What you're talking about, you mentioned you have a theory. So theoretically, what is it a conversation? What is it a dialogue? What are the differences? So we know what we're talking about here. Thank you.
I think that I answered already, but I can say it again. I think that there's different kind of ways to have a conversation. So one of them is a dialogue. And when I'm talking about dialogue, definition is that we focus on understanding. And we focus on understanding three things that I already mentioned.
So what you're saying is that there are other conversations which are not focused on understanding. So dialogue is the one about understanding, and the three things that you mentioned, the topic, yourself, and the other. But there are other conversations which are not about understanding these things.
No, I didn't say that. it's fruitful to have some kind of dialogue also when you are debating. If you understand others' point of views and that kind of sweet spots when you are debating with somebody else, you are using then in dialogue. But goal in the debating is to find best argument and win. And when you are negotiating, you try to make some kind of consensus and try to find some kind of shared thoughts and things. So the goal is have some kind of consensus. In dialogue, we are not searching the winning or try to find any consensus. We are just try to understand more.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for, a definition. Thanks.
Okay, good.
Maybe I can add a little bit more, because here we will talk both about the method, the dialogue circle, what Janne also mentioned. This is a specific method, how we gather people in the circle and we talk about specific topic or the question. But the other way how we use dialogue is generally in everyday situations and everyday conversation. We can also see that this is the mindset which I take when I'm having any kind of conversation with the person. So when I'm talking to Janne, I already tell myself, okay, I'm really trying to understand. Instead of thinking about what I will say, what kind of argument will I bring, how I try to convince him, but I try to say, okay, I'm trying to understand you. Yeah, so it's both ways, method and mindset.
Can I ask a follow-up question then to how does the dialogue differ from just listening?
I guess dialogue involves listening.
And what else does it involve?
Well, dialogue also involves sharing your experience. Like typically in the dialogue circle, there are also plenty of possibilities to experience dialogues here. There are those certain dialogue rules, and from my experience, they really, really help dialogue to go and to flow. So one is listening to each other and not interrupting. The second is sharing your own experiences. The third is asking questions to each other if you are interested. Then it was connecting to each other. And the last one is about looking for hidden and unknown together. So these were the 5 rules that it actually took us quite some time to come to these rules and really put them as simple, as clear, so we can truly, truly follow. And many times in the dialogue circles, when we start them, we ask people, if you look at these rules, think about which one you would have to pay more attention to. And how do you think? Which one of the rules people typically say? Listening. I would say majority of people say listening because it's really hard to listen and not to interrupt.
Küllike, I want to come to you now because this will, I think, further exemplify the difference of, or really the uniqueness of dialogue in this. So you've used kind of the skill to dialogue, but also dialogue circles in the work of a municipality. As we heard, dialogues are, the goal is to understand each other. It's not to come to a concrete, for example, a solution or an end result. As an Estonian, I find it always quite difficult to be, all right, we're talking, but we're not coming to a solution. I want to find like 3 things that we're now going to be doing next. It's very, very pragmatic. Have you seen this true also in your work? And how does dialogue then fit into all of this? Isn't just good communication from a municipality, doesn't that just do the job?
No, it doesn't. Sometimes communication for people from the local government is informing them. But this kind of, we did this kind of community meetings that it wasn't only about informing, but it was about listening to the community and really listening to them and discussing together with them. And then I think maybe you did it first time and the second time, people, like you said, wanted an answer, wanted something to happen. But I think 6, 7 times they already understand, and this is the place where we can really talk, really meet with the local government, really meet with the people who work there, have, how to say, personal connection. And when they really need something from the local government, or some kind of, how to say, they have some kind of problem or issue or a concern or an idea, they now, how to say, know the people who work there, and they are more freely and open to come to them and have open discussion. I think this is was the, how to say, the main idea for our community meetings, to know our people better, to be, how to say, have a face-to-face understanding each other, knowing each other. And I think this is, that doesn't mean that we don't have difficult topics or conflicts. It doesn't happen yet, but I think we have, how to say, this kind of open community meetings has made people, how to say, more we understand each other better, what we do, and some conflicts or problems can be solved better, and how to say, we meet halfway. So we have some kind of ideas in local government, or some kind of things we have to do, or something has to change, and when we and this is something maybe some communities or some people in our government do not like, then this kind of conflicts aren't that big. But I have to agree with you that we do need have to have some kind of conflicts, and some better solutions will come. And I think this kind of community meetings has taught our local communities that when we come together, we speak openly, better solution will come.
And can I feel a little bit, because I have made that kind of dialogues quite a lot, and I think that one main thing that happens in the dialogue when there are different kind of partners or participants is that you gather trust in that group, and then you also will have more flexible mind, so that you can understand things deeper or different ways, and start to have that kind of flexible mind, that you start to think that, okay, that person is saying like that. It's not, of course, it's not always the bad thing. There might be some kind of good things inside of that plan or thing also. So these trust and flexibility of mind happens in the dialogue, and I think that this is really important when we are using dialogue in that kind of situations.
Can I also give an example, so based on what you were saying? I think many times we come up with wrong solutions because we haven't spent enough time for understanding better. And I think you were commenting about that that many times we don't even understand what do we mean by some definitions. Let's say in many organizations people talk, let's respect each other more. But what does respect mean to us? And I think if all people would talk, there would be different understandings of respect. We did one work with one organization that was a business organization in this time, but I think it very much represents this need for understanding before going for the solutions. So there was higher level managers, and they felt that middle level managers are not taking enough of ownership. They wanted them to take more ownership and more responsibility. And then we said, okay, let's try to organize the dialogue circles. And we did, for the whole group, we did 3 dialogue circles together. We mixed them together, so middle-level managers together with higher-level managers. And we talked about the topic of ownership. What does the ownership mean to you? When do you take it? What stops you from taking it? How would you see ownership here in the company? And what came out of the result of these dialogues is that people don't take ownership because they don't feel appreciated for the work they already do. There was not enough of appreciation for the people generally. And then they said, why do we need to take more ownership? So, and then from that moment, these higher level managers, they understood, well, we have to be more grateful to them. We can not ask more from them unless we already say thank you for the things that they already do.
Küllike, can you also share an example? What surprised you when you met with citizens in these dialogues?
It's not a specific topic, but it was that when we started these community meetings, like for first 10 or 15 minutes, there are people usually there who are angry about something. they usually come if they have an issue. But if we explained how these meetings goes, how they go, our local government leaders or specialists introduced themselves, talked about themselves. We have this kind of very personal feel to it. And I think about 15 and 20 minutes later, people weren't that angry anymore, because it was very personal. It wasn't like I'm saying to you, it was more a dialogue. We were very open, we did it very personal, we talked, our specialists or local government leaders talked about themselves, like what kind of childhood they have if they lived in that area, or there's kind of very personal things. So they had because Jõhvi and Toila, they're two smaller local governments, they merged together. So now we have quite big area and small communities. So we went to each community, and all the local government members or specialists, they all said something that connects them to the place. So we, like I said, personal view, personal, connection to the place, and then people were, okay, you really care about us. You really came to us. And I think then they weren't, those issues or problems, they weren't that angry anymore. They were more like, okay, we have this kind of thing, maybe we can do something together. They already had ideas, and they had this platform where they can talk about those ideas. And I think this is important for those meetings. Really talk what they really expect from us.
This comes back to, I think, the first conversation we heard about from the audience quite a bit. How do you show vulnerability? But it really starts from one person or one side showing that they trust the other side enough to share a bit of themselves, create this space where the rules of the game are different from what they expected this confrontation or arguing or fighting to be like, right? We've, I think, touched upon quite a bit around what happens to a person during dialogue. And Lauma, you've, with your background, that's especially interesting. What happens to a person in psychologically when they go through a dialogue or this particular dialogue circle? Can you share some?
Yes. I can also share psychological theories and also some experiences. I totally agree. Sometimes we have seen that people come to the dialogue maybe a little bit angry, a little bit, okay, I will say everything what I think. And then they sit in the circle and something is changing. Because the facilitator, like normally these are dialogue facilitators who know how to facilitate the dialogue, they come with this very nice attitude and positive attitude towards everyone. There is equality, there is a space to share, and there is something changing in the people when they sit in the circle. I think it would be different if it would be a position as in the theater, the row after the row, then it would be maybe the emotions would be more intense. I think the second thing is that people experience that they are being heard, and also if we look from participation aspect, when people feel that they are being heard, their participation rate will be higher. They will participate more in the activities if they know somebody listened to my idea. So it's not even important that this idea was taken for realization, but at least somebody listened to my idea. And also that there is ability to express your opinion. We have seen really healing experiences for people. There was one dialogue circle in a municipality. We talked about how people see this municipality and how they would like to see it in the future. And we had people from different ages. And in my circle, there was a lady around 70 years old. And we talked about the rules and the ages. There were 70 years old and also different other ages. So, and when we talked about the rules, and I asked them, so which of the rules you have to take yourself more, pay attention to? And this older lady said, well, it's actually very hard for me to express my opinion, to share about my experiences. And I said, well, how come? And she said, well, because when I was young, in my school, kids were laughing about what I said. Since then, I always keep my opinion to myself. And that was a little bit therapeutical moment, but then we were sitting there in the group and I said, well, share as much as you can. And the dialogue is meant to have a safe place where you can talk as much as you can, and we are there for holding this space. And then in the dialogue, she shared, and some people also reflected on what she was saying. And at the end of the dialogue, she said it was the most that she shared in a really recent time. And she kind of got back this realization that her voice matters, that she has something to say as well. So another thing is about the psychological safety that I was mentioning also before is this is especially is happening in communities, in the organizations. People are opening up, they become more vulnerable, and they are having this belief that I can share my opinion, my thoughts, and I will be not judged about this. And the psychological safety, it leads really in the teams to the greater collaboration, to the greater efficiency, and in the communities it leads also to the more active participation. So we want to be belonging to this group a little bit more. And I think the last important, what I also notice is that in the dialogue, it's an internal process that happens. People start to think how they think. They start to think, how did I come to this conclusion? How did I come to this idea? We had, for example, dialogue circles about in the school for the kids of age 7 to 8 years old. And the topic was friendship. And we were asking, so what does friendship mean to you? And there was one girl, she said, friendship means to me when I give or somebody else gives each other expensive presents. And other kids, well, you don't always need to give expensive presents to be a friend. And then at the end of the dialogue circle, she said, well, I understood that friendship means that you need to give presents, but they don't necessarily have to be expensive. But of course, in this dialogue circle, we also talked, where does this idea comes from? And it came for her upraising, how she was upraised and what kids typically do when they come to the birthdays. So that was her metaphor about the friendship.
Maria, with just coming to children, and we just had a conversation while you were all also discussing about when is it that you actually can have a dialogue with your child, and when is it that you actually need to say this is a hard no, or maybe you need to have a dialogue circle to understand that scooters don't have to go 50 kilometers an hour and that you don't need to be on them. Now, working with this from the kind of very international level, starting from a personal side, have you seen any change in how you approach dialogues because of the work that you see is being done through this dialogue movement?
I think what's important to remember, or that I suddenly remembered when I started getting acquainted with dialogue methods and dialogue work, was not to make fun of university degrees, but sometimes you apply for a job and there is that requirement that you need to have a university degree, and then hopefully you do and you apply, and or you might be in a job that has required a university degree, and I think many of you would recognize the feeling that, did I really need, those 5 years at university to be able to do this job? You might question that sometimes, but I have now found 2 examples of things that I learned studying political science at Uppsala University, that we were learning in the very first semester, that actually relates to dialogue work. And I think that's also, given me a bit of a reminder that, we might treat this as something relatively new in what we do, or how we do it from the Nordic Council of Ministers or from the different countries. But the value of dialogues or the techniques are not necessarily new, but it's a good reminder that we need them. Democratic societies or resilient societies or strong societies are societies that are also more prosperous. They're also more equal, not just in terms of gender equality, but can be equality between individuals in many other ways. And I remember that was one of the things you would learn in the first semester of political science, that democratic societies, resilient societies, strong societies, they build on inclusiveness. They build on people being able to understand each other, people being able to work with each other. However, and this is very comforting, we do not need to agree. We don't need to agree on everything. We can have different perspectives, opinions, and wishes, but we do need to work with these different perspectives, wishes, and opinions with those that are around us. Another thing that I think is also brings me back to that political science semester 1, and linking that now, 30 years later in the work of the Nordic Council of Ministers, is I don't know, those of you who maybe studied political history or political theory, one of the things you learn, at least in Uppsala University, is you learn about the strength in associations, people coming together. And you get to read about a few case studies. And one of the case studies is actually Estonia. Another of the case studies is usually Italy, comparing North Italy with South Italy. And looking at the level of associations, to which extent individuals are engaged in. It can be a local football team, or it can be dialogue circles, it can be singing in a local choir, you can be part of a neighborhood group trying to deal with the garbage situation. It can be really anything. But societies that have had a lot of that are also more resilient, they're more prosperous, and they have a higher respect for democratic values. And Estonia is always brought out as a good example, looking at the many years of Soviet rule, and how Estonia managed to keep a lot of resilience and the value of coming together in associations by singing in choirs. With this, we preserved a habit of coming together, organizing ourselves, agreeing on things, speaking to each other, perhaps being able to preserve language or history and other things. And similar comparisons are made in Italy, I know, where northern Italy having a much richer history of associations or similar things compared to the south. And those are things that have come back to me actually when the Nordic Council of Ministers are also investing in this, that you come back to why we are really doing this. And it does come back to resilient societies, democratic values, and wanting to not just build, but preserve a strong society. It's not something we just have and always have. We need to nurture it and hence preserve it.
Maybe that's not only a question to you, Maria, but to others as well. But if you now think 10 years in the future, what does that resilience look like in practice? So what is if you talk about the kind of skill of dialogue or culture change, we are able to have these conversations where we understand and really listen to each other. What does that look in practice? How do we measure success of this dialogue movement?
I think one of our participants, I'm not sure where she is, but at the beginning she mentioned something about more complex societies, more complex, I think, challenges or something along those lines. And I think that's one of the things. We're seeing a lot of complexity. We're seeing a lot of polarization. We see a lot of things in not just in Estonia, but also in the Nordic countries and elsewhere, issues that are pulling us away from each other. We see a lot of polarization. That might be unemployment, it might be mental health issues, it might be economic investments, it might be different political views within one and the same family, but having to come together in the evening for dinner. It can be many different things, of course. We see a lot of traditional values coming back around the world. And in order to deal with that, solving difficult problems is not something we do on our own. I don't think any of us can fix it for the world or for the family or for the society or the neighborhood or whatever it is. So I think in 10 years, I think we really need that. I think we're going to see even more complexity. I think we're going to see continued polarization. And part of the answer, I would argue, is being able to solve problems together. And for that, we need to come together and to be able to talk about them. What the solutions then are would be up to us, but we're not going to fix it on our own.
What does success look like in 10 years?
Yeah, I would add also, Maria, from what you were saying, I think you mentioned that dialogue is not about agreeing and not coming to one idea or one understanding. I think it's about really greatly being in one room with different opinions, being able to hear each other, not shutting down the door, not leaving, not being this impulsive, like, no, I'm gonna leave it, I don't like it. But no matter how different we see things, we are able to stay in the room and keep talking. And the other thing, I think it's about slowing down, because dialogue, the same as democracy, it takes time. We cannot do it quickly. We cannot be in dialogue quickly. We really need to slow it down. And this is why sometimes it's really hard, because listening requires time. And if we don't have time, we are not able actually to listen and to be in a dialogue. And the third, I think it's about seeing people and not as an object. Because the moment we see them as objects, we start to become arrogant, we start to be irrelevant for them, and we don't see them as people who have their story, who have their experience, who have their reasoning. Why are they thinking the way they are thinking?
For me, I think that in 10 years' time, this kind of resilience, success would look like that people are willing to accept that people are different and they have different kind of point of views, and willing to accept that I don't have to change or those other peoples don't have to change. That kind of diversity of opinions and diversity of way of lives and way of thinking. And second one is that in this kind of resilience success, there would be more and more people which have in this way flexible minds, so that they can think by themselves that, okay, I think like this, but I can try to think from different angle, or I really don't understand you or you, but I'm willing to try to understand you. That kind of flexibility, which dialogue gives. If you are having this kind of way of dialogical way of life, you suddenly start to think about your own thoughts, as you told about those school kids, that, okay, now I can realize that I have thought this way in this far, and now I can see that there is different ways also to think this issue. So that kind of flexibility and acceptance for the differences.
And Janne, I have a question. Do you think it's possible in that family setting? Because I think it's nice when we are in the larger society, but when it comes to the parents, to the partners, with the kids, it's really hard to be flexible, because you want that the other person does it your way.
It's more difficult. It's that kind of difficult place to have a dialogue, especially if you have teenagers, because I think that to have this kind of flexibility and acceptance for the differences, you have to agree to try to understand. But if you are a teenager which brain is bubbling up, you don't always have this kind of willingness to try to understand your parent, that there might be some truth or meaningful words in his mouth or thoughts. But I think that it's possible. I have 6 kids, and I think that we managed to do quite often dialogical way of life. Not with the teenagers quite often, but other ways, yes.
And have daily dialogue circles at home.
Yeah, my kids are saying sometimes that, do we have to talk again? They are not this kind of dialogue circles, but dialogical way of life, so that we try to understand differences in us and in our family, so that we can accept that, okay, you don't want to go there or do this kind of things, or okay, you think that that person is some way great, I think it's crazy, or this kind of acceptance, so that everybody's opinions are important and they are true for that person, but we don't have to agree. That kind of way of life.
I remember there was a research about couples who stay in the marriage longer. And what they found out, the couples who stay longer in the marriage, it's not about that they don't have fights, but they have more fights, and they are those couples who can resolve fights better. So it's not actually the ones who are not having any fights and any dialogues, probably.
And when I'm facilitating dialogue, if there is this kind of sudden burst of conflicts or the emotions, usually that kind of calming thing is to say that we don't have to solve this conflict in this moment, in this dialogue. We don't have to solve it, but please, let's try to understand what is it about. And these are that kind of magic words, and I think that you can use them in every kind of situation. Kullik, I don't know if you have had this kind of experiences that people are angry, and if you say that, please, let's try to understand what this conflict is about, it calms people down, and people are more skillful to continue. They will have this kind of release in the emotions, that they are skillful to think still.
We are almost at time. So my final round, answering the question, but also answering the ask from the audience to help us be better at dialogues. Can you name us one thing that you would take from this discussion on how to be better at dialogues?
For me, is to have intention to be in the dialogue. So the moment when next time you start a conversation, try to think for yourself, am I now in the dialogue? Am I willing to be in the dialogue with the person?
I have 2 answers. Use dialogue circle. It's method. It has designed to help you to be in the dialogue and facilitate also dialogue. So it has been translated in Estonian, English, and Latvian, and Lithuanian, and Norway, and all kind of languages. Find that and use it. And another thing is go in the dialogues. There is dialogue tent. Go in that tent and be in the dialogue and learn to listen and learn to express your own inner experiences. I think that you can manage with these easily. But what else?
I was also going to say, try it. Give it an hour. But Küllike and we were talking about teenagers a little earlier, and as difficult as it can be, I think one of the things that we were saying is try to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. So as much as I would like my son to understand why it's not a good idea to drive his electric scooter in 50 kilometers an hour, to just really try to understand why he would like that, or what what thoughts he has. So it's not easy always, but try to meet, I think, individuals where they are and not where you want them to be.
I agree with you. And I think it's all about respect. Just be respectful to yourself, to others, and just listen. So I agree with everybody, what you have said already.
From my side, I can say that I heard about the dialogue circles and the national dialogues for many years. I had a vague understanding of what it could be. If your interest is now piqued or you're even more confused than before, then yes, please go to a dialogue tent right next to us on stage 17. I used the same method to get to know the dialogue circle some years back in Arvamus Festival. And I can say it's probably one of the most positive experiences that I've had. It was such a warm feeling to be heard, to share your thoughts, and to hear and to really understand what others think about this as well, without the pressure of we need to argument, we need to make sure that we come to some kind of a solution. So that's highly encouraged. In Estonia, we also have dialogues coming in Ida-Virumaa soon. So there's ways to get involved, to be part here or elsewhere. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you for the Nordic Council of Ministers for organizing this, for the Estonian Cooperation Assembly for organizing this, and happy dialoguing.